hear me out. This might be the most important puzzle game you've never played. I know, that sounds like hyperbole, and maybe it is, but I think I've found a video game that not only transcends its genre, but also speaks to something deeply human if you're willing to listen. And while a lot of puzzle games out there can feel daunting or smug at times, this journey into a far-off land is accessible, while remaining insanely satisfying. The premise might be familiar, especially if you've been following my channel for a while, but it's the execution and storytelling that set it apart. This indie game from Rundisc drops you into an unfamiliar world where unknown symbols form foreign languages. To unravel the game's mysteries, you need to assume the role of translator, a detective of culture. But it's more than just that. This is more than a puzzle game. This is a game for people who love video games, for people who are chronically online, like me, for all of us who have a passion, a drive. It's a game that really puts into perspective what we're all doing here and how we interact. Lofty intro, I know, but this is why everyone should play Chants of Sennaar, or the language of listening. We're gonna get into more of the video essay in just a second, but if you do end up enjoying what you see, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps out small creators like me to be seen by more people. And if you want to support financially, I have a Ko-fi page, but more about that at the end of the video. Take it away, past me. Translation is actually a surprisingly common mechanic in video games. Lots of development teams seem to add a mysterious script to their worlds that the player needs to unravel to make their way through the story. It's a really effective way to help someone feel as out of place as the character, making both feel out of their element while giving them a sense of place as well. World building and immersion. It's efficient, and when done right, can set up some really engaging mysteries too. As a language becomes more clear, your view of a game's environment might come into focus, leading you to discoveries that you had to earn. Like a fantastical detective of culture, where your clues are words and your discoveries are knowledge. A lot of my favorite video games over the past few years have coincidentally utilized translation as a central mechanic that's led to some of my favorite aha moments in recent memory. Souls-like shortcuts notwithstanding. But if you're a longtime viewer of my video essays, this might all sound a bit familiar. And you're right. I made a similar video about this topic a few years ago. If you haven't watched it, I go on to praise the likes of Tunic, Outer Wilds, and a lot of other titles that use language as a core mystery to be uncovered, where the game loop itself is the act of translation. Even the mysterious symbols in Abzu, Hollow Knight, and Fez got their moment to shine in that video essay, building a world and a history in their own settings. So why am I here almost exactly 2 years later covering this topic again? Has this video essayist run out of content ideas? Is he recycling scripts already? Has the well finally run dry? No, Jeremy, calm down. It's actually because of all my videos, that's the one that actually led to one of my biggest regrets on this channel. I know, that one? Really? If you've scrolled through the trenches of my comment sections, you might think that regret might be tied to daring to dislike Ori and the Blind Forest, or that one time that I mentioned in passing that H.P. Lovecraft was racist. But no regrets there whatsoever. But rather, I wish I would have waited just 1 year to cover the topic of translation as a video game mechanic. While the games I was able to include in that original video essay were great examples of how language can serve as an immersive mystery in a virtual landscape, in my opinion, what turned out to be the most unique take on that mechanic wasn't even out yet. And ever since its release, I wished I could go back and add in a section dedicated to it. Chants of Sennaar. Once I saw the trailer for this game, I knew it would be right up my alley. That art style? Minimalistic perfection. Multiple languages to decode? Sign me up. But what seemed most intriguing to me was something that all the other games I had covered lacked. Chants of Sennaar wasn't just about translation, it was about communicating. As much as those other games did appeal to me, they mostly felt isolated, lonely. Each of these were ancient languages, deciphered to solve a puzzle or to learn of cultures long gone, reading passages of lives already lived, insights into conflicts gone cold, peeking into ways of life forever behind a pane of glass. I'd never get to interact with these civilizations I was becoming intimately familiar with, and that wasn't necessarily something I had held against those games. In the moment of playing them, I rarely had that thought, but in hindsight, I longed for chances to connect with these cultures in a more tactile way. Clearly, this cold distance was by design though. Outer Wilds' dark space adventure and Tunic's almost alien fantasy setting each greatly benefit from a feeling of unearthing something bigger than yourself. But the idea that I might be able to learn new languages and not only hear living people's stories, but also speak to them, that excited me. Talking to people in the process of living those lives. Maybe I'd have a chance to intervene in those conflicts I was so used to reading about. Those ways of life could finally come out from behind that glass. Rather than feeling like I was sightseeing in a museum, a chance to interact and use that newfound language with those who speak it. Needless to say, Chants of Sennaar shot to the top of my Steam wishlist. And after this exciting new puzzle game came out, I snatched it up right away. But I'll be honest, it sat in my gaming backlog for quite some time. One Steam sale passed, and then another. My excitement to play Chants of Sennaar never waned, but it happened to release during a fairly chaotic period in my life. And aside from the games I was playing on my Twitch streams, I didn't have much time to be devoting to video games. Fucking gaming! Are you ever playing a video game and it's just gaming and you're a fucking gamer who games? I love it. But I don't subscribe to the idea that we should feel shame for how many titles we have sitting in our backlog. For the most part, they're not going anywhere. And I think I mentioned this in my Sable video essay, but sometimes those games in our backlog are just biding their time, waiting for their moment, a moment in our lives where we might need them. An introspective walking sim, or a majestic quest where we come out the other side a different person. Or the moment may finally come where we're actually listening to what a game might have to say. So, as intrigued as I was to dive into the world of Chants of Sennaar, it wasn't until fairly recently that I actually felt it was time to immerse myself in its colors and mysteries. I knew this was about to be something special. Upon being released from my coffin to explore this intimidating environment, I found myself having pretty direct flashbacks to those games I talked about in my earlier video essay. Tunic, Outer Wilds, even Sable, lonely expanses, ancient linguistics, and the immediate itch to explore. But almost as quickly as that sense of gaming deja vu came, it vanished as I met someone trying to speak to me. Their language, a foreign grouping of symbols that I could barely guess at. Maybe a hello? A plead for help? There was no way to know. But this first interaction put into perspective just how different this game would be. Like, I had imagined this wouldn't just be an exercise in excavation. The entire crux of this game would be working to be understood. Oddly enough, leaving this interaction without being able to fully grasp what this cyan stranger was saying left me feeling a slight panic. Making my way through the game's first puzzle while feeling no closer to what those symbols meant was a bit demoralizing. And in waves, that sensation of being a foreigner without the means to communicate with anyone around me flooded back. As someone who moved to the United States as a child knowing only my native language, I can tell you that not being able to communicate with a single person is terrifying. It's a cold and isolating feeling. And the only solution is assimilation, donning the mannerisms and customs around you in silence. It instilled this fear of being misunderstood, meaning one thing, but strangers hearing another. Words misconstrued or seen through a different lens than my own. I know, picked the perfect career for myself in that regard, huh? But luckily, the game gave me some pretty concrete clues as to what these symbols might mean. Take these levers. This must be the word for up or closed. So the corresponding symbol is almost guaranteed to mean the opposite. I was finally getting somewhere, and before long, the game's most vital tool came into play, the journal. It's here that my characters started jotting down every symbol they came across. It was up to me as the player to fill in my best guess as to its meaning. Is that word person, friend, lemur, penis? I could enter anything and at any time, but every once in a while, the journal presented me with a group of sketches with open little circles next to them. A pop quiz of sorts where I had a chance to test my theories. But the catch was, the game would only confirm correct translations if everything in a spread was accurate. So while brute forcing these sketches was out of the question, if I was in a predicament with one word while feeling confident in the others, I had a lifeline of sorts with the ability to try a few options before landing on the right one. After meeting more people from this unfamiliar civilization, seeing more symbols, and filling out more pages of my journal, the rules and customs of this new culture became a little less alien. Two of the same symbol? Plural. A symbol in a square? A location. I was slowly learning and more confidently going into each subsequent interaction. I learned of the deep religious reverence for music, learned how to play a new card game, albeit a simple one, and even heard of the culture's oppression by another. I could comfortably assimilate until... Oh, that symbol looks a little different from the others. Wait, what do you mean another language? Just as I was getting the hang of the devotees' language, the symbols of the oppressors brought me right back to square one. But I wasn't the only one who couldn't understand them. It was clear that both cultures couldn't communicate with each other. This kind of tension born out of misunderstanding continued as I entered the warriors' domain. They clearly weren't as receptive to my presence as the devotees were, though. Each time I was spotted, all nearby warriors converged on me. No wonder the devotees lived in fear. If you've spent any amount of time on the internet over the past decade, you'll know that unprovoked hostility all too well. In a gaming-focused space, even more so. Dare to voice an opinion that's too out of the norm and you'll be crucified. Taken to task over what you thought was a harmless opinion. But no, you were asking for war with that take about Gale's personality. Being excited about the release of a game that's exclusive to Switch 2? How dare you? That sarcasm isn't to say there aren't valid crucifixions out there when it comes to more serious issues, of course. But as someone who frequently shares my opinion about media with the internet, it will never fail to impress me how quick video game fans are to form a lynch mob if someone doesn't unequivocally worship their favorite JRPG or Souls-like. You enjoyed a game for the most part, but you didn't love the writing? Well, of course, that means you hated it. Or even better, the passive-aggressive retort of smug old Jeremy, you just didn't get it. It's like we all speak different languages, but instead of trying to decipher each other's hieroglyphs, we skip straight to the hostility. I've touched on this briefly in my video essay about how fandoms can ruin games that they claim to love, but a video game can be quite a personal experience. It's an inherently subjective and individual act to play a game. We spend tens, if not hundreds, of hours in these worlds, talking to these characters, living these second lives. It's easy to become attached. In fact, it would be impressive and slightly concerning if that amount of investment didn't lead to some sort of emotional connection. So being protective over your Baldur's Gate 3 romance or your Monster Hunter weapon of choice that you've been using for the past decade makes sense to a certain degree. These games have been there for us after a long day at work. They've helped us tune out the world when it gets too loud. They've helped us cope with some tough personal moments. They've held us when we didn't think anyone else could. And maybe they've even connected us to friends we'll cherish for a lifetime. It would be disingenuous to dismiss the importance of these video games and how they can impact us. If you're this deep into a niche as fuck video essay about an indie translate 'em up, I'm willing to bet you've had at least one or two video games hit you in that way. We're all passionate lovers of this art form on some level. Whether you're a sweaty first-person shooter tryhard or a turn-based armchair tactician, we're all here for the same thing. A connection, a story, a pivotal gaming experience. But as someone who's gotten real, actual death threats for not loving everyone's favorite forest rat, or for reminding Jeremy over there that his favorite dead author won't text him back, I can tell you with confidence that the internet has made us all a little less receptive to each other's words. As the collective World Wide Web has become more focused on streamlined consumerism and tailored algorithms to ensnare our attention, it's become much easier to be sheltered in our virtual echo chambers. We can log on and never see another user's dissenting opinion because that's what keeps us scrolling, what keeps us subscribing, what keeps us watching ads. But when someone does pop that comfortable bubble with their opposing take, whether it be hot or lukewarm, it can be rather jarring. A silent friction that makes us want to look the other way. So instead of scrolling on and not interacting, these algorithms have trained us to stoke the flames, to debate in bad faith, to hear things that weren't said, to disregard nuance, to essentially communicate in different languages from one another, all over an art form that we each fiercely love, even if it is in wildly different ways. As I made my way deeper into Chants of Sennaar, I noticed a similar divide in this world's cultures. Each layer of this tower I was exploring housed a different group of people, with their own customs, aesthetic, and languages that appear completely different from one another. There's this clear and immediate contrast between the devotees' more organic shapes and the flourishes of the bards. This first language that I encountered was a set of glyphs that was still rooted visually at least, in the brushstrokes that they were likely born out of. But their vocabulary for the culture situated just above them on the tower introduces this unnatural angularity. It's an almost aggressive symbol, sharp, like the weapons those warriors hold. The only other time this language has such rigidity is seen in their word for negativity, or no. And sure enough, once I started to decode the language of this militant culture just above the devotees, these angular shapes were everywhere. Gone was that DNA of a brushstroke. Now everything felt like it could have been etched into a stone wall with a knife. Every overheard statement featured razor-sharp corners, words like weapons, threatening, just like their devotion to their fortress-like structures, to their leaders, and to their sense of pointed duty. Languages tell us a lot about the people who speak them, whether in their written form or even in their vocabulary. Take the people who the warriors revere as the chosen ones, who live just above them. They've been allowed to take this elevator and live in their own civilization, insulated from any danger or outsiders that may come from below. Ascended, these bards live unburdened by violence or any real structure, as we can see by their language of flourish and loose grammar. And I do mean loose. But what's even more telling, it's the only culture that has a dedicated word for idiot, using it to describe the brutish warriors beneath them, as if these lazy flaneurs with slaves restricted to the sewers have any room to talk. I mean, their rivers look like they have the scent of asparagus, if you know what I mean. The alchemists just above seem to keep to themselves, not having many words at their disposal to refer to other people, preferring instead to stick to their studies and strict schedules. The only glyphs in Chants of Sennaar to denote specific amounts or times are found on this fourth layer. And even these shapes look like they could feel right at home near a periodic table, or in your laundry's care instructions. Through each culture's language, we get a lot of insight into what separates each group from another besides just their elevation levels. Elevators and locked doors are substantial barriers, yeah, but the evolution of each language driving wedges between these groups is much more of an obstacle. A lot of them actually value the same ideals, but through different lenses. While the shapes of their speech might be worlds apart and their grammar couldn't be more different, each culture clearly came from similar beginnings. It was their eventual misunderstandings, though, that led to their gradual resentments. Fear, disgust, disinterest. Insular people that kept to themselves for generations upon generations, losing the tools to communicate. As humans, it's a natural response to fear what we can't understand. And as I found out in the final section of the game, this isolation is threatening to kill the very tower that all of these people call their home. The worst part is, there was no inciting incident to the slow separation of all these groups. There doesn't seem to have been a war or conflict or serious ideological differences. The tower's residents simply drifted apart into their echo chambers of stone after their languages began to evolve into completely different forms of speech. But it's clear there's still one thing that connects everyone atop this pseudo Tower of Babel, regardless of how divided they've become. As I journeyed through the different layers of Chants of Sennaar's world, there were pretty clear distinctions between each culture, like their color schemes and the shape of their words. But the closer I looked, the closer these groups actually seemed to one another. Because of their inability to communicate across borders effectively, these similarities in each group's DNA likely escapes them. But from overarching traditions to more specific details, it seems the parallels between these civilizations on this mountain outnumber the differences, actually. What most players, myself included, will spend most of their time poring over during the course of Chants of Sennaar are the glyphs that make up each language. And while within each language, there are clear parallels that can visually link similar words together, like the devotees' words for human, you, and even death? A similar line can be traced between words across different languages too. Most glyphs that refer to a specific culture all share some visual grammar. So the warrior's glyph for the bards, who they see as the chosen ones, has a lot of the same characteristics as the alchemist's glyph for bard. And the list goes on. Little clues hidden throughout different words for the same thing show how linked the tower's inhabitants are underneath all that misunderstanding. Once I started seeing it, some of these shared words became like a family tree of etymology, further enforcing the idea that all of these groups sprung from the same ancestral seeds. Details like this even made their way into the world's architecture. At the bottom of this mountain, the devotees' word for up, or greatness, looks like this. Stuck behind the cold iron of the ruthless warriors, it's easy to imagine the men and women of the lowest layer looking up, wishing to maybe climb to a higher elevation, hoping to rise above their means. Up is synonymous with greatness, after all. Maybe this word is one of the few that's been around since before the current separation that we're privy to. Maybe it even predates the building of this gargantuan structure, because that symbol for up is used on the side of the warrior's telescope, a device of great innovation used to gaze, well, up. It's almost ironic how prominently this building features, while unbeknownst to the warriors, displaying a word from a language spoken by those that they work to oppress below them. But the most clear similarities in the game appeared once I started tackling the real objective of Chants of Sennaar. While translating each language and glyph for my own understanding was definitely useful in my mission to simply understand this world, that wasn't all I was doing. Because at these terminals that allowed me to fast travel, I'd often eavesdrop on a stunted attempt at a conversation as well. Two members of different groups trying to communicate. But due to mismatched glyphs and the barrier of language, they were always at an impasse. And like some sort of divine intervention, I was there. And while some grammar rules may have made this tough, fucking bards, I had all the tools I needed to be a quasi-interpreter here. What I soon discovered was that not only were members of each culture trying to speak to others, but a lot of conflicts between civilizations aren't conflicts at all. The warriors see the bards as chosen ones because of their ability to create music so effortlessly. No bulky, unwieldy bell required. But the disdain they display for the devotees stems from their lack of respect for music. But wait, those devotees do, in fact, love music and worship its healing properties. Helping bridge these gaps in language was so eye-opening because simple misunderstandings like these so easily led to resentments. But once a culture had the ability to listen to another, reconciliation can happen just as quickly. After each successful translation of an exchange, I got to immediately see the fruits of my labor. Somewhere on the tower, members of different communities were learning to coexist once again. Maybe it was a warrior vibing to a devotee's relaxing tunes, or a different warrior helping the alchemists capture a dangerous creature lurking in the shadows. But as each culture learned more about the others, it was clear this was where the game's real magic was. Because once all of those cultural links were established, the deepest and most significant connection came into focus. It's made pretty clear that each stage of this tower has dedicated their lives to something different. They all worship or work towards different things. A devotion to their god, a sense of duty, a life of beauty, a fascination with transformation, or an escape from reality. And while the words of each culture's focus may look different at first glance, completing each terminal's conversations reveals a network of links, creating a uniquely three-dimensional glyph. A shape that, when rotated, reveals all of these words. Words that from different perspectives can be seen completely differently, but by the same token could mean the exact same thing. God. Duty. Beauty. Transformation. Escape. Language was never the barrier. It was perspective. We need more video games like Chants of Sennaar, where the simple act of listening and communicating can bring people closer, resolving conflicts and deepening understandings between people who, despite having different perspectives, value the same things. With every year that passes, I see internet culture cater more and more to snap judgments, clickbait, shock value, and speaking as loudly as possible. Misinformation seeping out of every digital pore, and electronic fuzz making it harder than ever to hear each other. And this indie puzzle game about foreign symbols and glyphs shows us the dangers of a life lived in ignorance, a life of stubborn misunderstandings, of jumping to anger, and of picking fights over trivial things. It's a monument to how similar we all are, and to how, together, a community can grow around shared understanding and communication. Was the game perfect? No, there's a small handful of stealth moments that felt a little awkward, and I thought the game's final language felt less like a puzzle to be solved and more like the game was racing to the finish line. But when the game is firing on all cylinders, it's a unique joy. It scratches that itch in the back of your brain. It's a one-of-a-kind take on the language-based mystery game. So anyway, play Chants of Sennaar. Get out of your digital echo chambers and allow yourself to be exposed to some different opinions about life's more harmless things. Like, Gale sucks. Ori and the Blind Forest wasn't that good. Kingdom Hearts 2 should have been the last game in the series. And I could keep going. Roguelikes are boring. Lovecraft was racist. Platform exclusivity isn't that big of a deal. But hey, I hope you enjoyed this video essay, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that like button down below. It really does help push these videos out to more and more people, especially for a small creator like me. That sort of simple support really means the world to me, genuinely. And speaking of, thank you so much to Suspicious Fish, One's the Loneliest, Why Not Omelet 69, Diva Grind, Kyle and Rain of Couchbugs, Lion Bite, Max Wattage, Crazy Tyndall, Nightmare God, Bean Fiello, John Lax, Sarah, Comrade Quest, Robertson, Cab Danvers, Velt Walker, and Voxamandius. Those are my monthly supporters over on my Ko-fi page. If you're not familiar with Ko-fi, it's kind of like Patreon, but a lot cooler. Plus, I get to take home a lot more of that money. So if you do want to support this content financially and make sure that I can make more of these videos more often, because money be money in, you know? Then you can support me for as little as $4 a month, or you can also make a one-time donation. But if you do become a monthly supporter, you get to see sneak peeks of these video essays, get your say in which thumbnail I use, shoutouts at the end here, a bunch of cool stuff. And thank you so much for your patience on this one, y'all. I've been doing some editing for some other creators to make some extra income and streaming a lot more over on my Twitch channel. Oh my God.
You pause a moment as a thought occurs to you. Where is a mind flayer's mouth?
We're about to find out. We're about to find out, baby.
Monsters. Diagrams in a book you read long ago. A mind flayer's mouth is underneath the tentacles.
Oh, the way he... Kiss the tentacle and hope it's an erogenous appendage. What? What the fuck? So honestly, finding the time to work on these video essays sometimes is a little bit rough, but I'm doing my best, I promise. Anyway, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You're amazing, and oh yeah.